Create a YouTube video using this script. Table of contents. Part 1, Introduction, about 4 sections. Section 1. The high cost of winning. Have you ever won an argument but felt like you lost? You walked away victorious, but something was off. Maybe a relationship felt strained, or a simple disagreement escalated into something bigger. We often think of arguments as battles to be won. But what if true victory lies in avoiding the fight altogether? This is where the wisdom of Machiavelli and the Stoics comes in. Both understood that arguments, even when won, can come at a steep price. They saw the hidden costs, damaged relationships, wasted energy, and missed opportunities for connection. This essay explores a different approach, one that prioritizes influence over dominance, understanding over victory. We'll dive into the strategies of Machiavelli, the master of strategy, and the timeless wisdom of the Stoics, who valued inner peace above all else. By understanding their insights, we can learn to navigate disagreements with more grace, build stronger relationships, and achieve our goals without leaving a trail of discord in our wake. Section 2. Machiavelli, the art of strategic silence. Machiavelli, often remembered for his political treatise The Prince, was a keen observer of human nature and power dynamics. He believed that arguments, while sometimes unavoidable, were often a strategic liability. Why? Because they generate unnecessary enemies. Every argument, even if won, chips away at your social capital. It creates resentment and opposition. Machiavelli understood that true power lay in building alliances, not alienating potential allies. He advocated for a more subtle approach, strategic silence. By choosing your battles wisely and refraining from engaging in every disagreement, you conserve your energy and maintain a position of strength. This doesn't mean suppressing your voice or conceding every point. It's about discerning when to speak up and when to remain silent, letting your actions speak louder than words. Machiavelli teaches us that influence is a long game. It's about carefully choosing your battles and building a reputation for wisdom and discernment, not for being the loudest voice in the room. Section 3. The Stoic Path. Inner peace over verbal victory. While Machiavelli focused on the strategic implications of arguments, the Stoics offered a different perspective, one rooted in inner peace. Figures like Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor, and Epictetus, a former slave-turned-philosopher, championed a philosophy that prized reason, virtue, and tranquility above all else. They believed that arguments were not just strategically disadvantageous, but also deeply detrimental to our well-being. Why waste precious mental energy on disputes that ultimately change little? The Stoics differentiated between discussion and argument. Discussion, they argued, is a shared pursuit of truth, a collaborative exploration of ideas. Argument, on the other hand, is a battle of egos, fueled by pride and the need to be right. They taught that true strength lay in controlling our emotions, not letting them control us. By refusing to be drawn into pointless arguments, we conserve our energy for what truly matters, living a virtuous life. Section 4. A new path. From argument to understanding, both Machiavelli and the Stoics offer valuable insights into the futility of seeking victory in arguments. While their approaches differ, their core message resonates: there's a better way. Instead of viewing disagreements as battles to be won, we can approach them as opportunities for growth and understanding. This shift in perspective requires conscious effort. It means letting go of the need to be right, actively listening to opposing viewpoints, and seeking common ground. In the following sections, we'll explore practical strategies for putting this wisdom into action. We'll learn how to avoid unnecessary arguments, transform arguments into productive discussions, and build influence without resorting to confrontation. By embracing the principles of Machiavelli and the Stoics, we can navigate the complexities of human interaction with more skill and grace, fostering stronger relationships and creating a more harmonious existence for ourselves and those around us. Section 1. The Illusion of Victory. Niccolò Machiavelli, a man who peered into the heart of power and saw it for what it truly was, understood the seductive allure of victory in an argument. To silence an opponent, to hear the echo of your own pronouncements ringing truer. These are tempting sirens in the sea of human interaction. But Machiavelli, ever the pragmatist, saw past this fleeting triumph to the deeper, more enduring consequences that often lay hidden beneath the surface. For what is a victory in words but a Pyrrhic victory at best? You may have silenced your adversary for the moment, but have you truly won them over? Have you earned their respect, their loyalty, or merely their grudging acquiescence? These are the questions a true Machiavellian asks, for they understand that true power rests not in fleeting triumphs of ego, but in the slow, meticulous cultivation of influence. To engage in every argument is to become a prisoner of the moment, reacting to every perceived slight, every challenge to one's intellect or authority. It is to surrender the higher ground of strategy for the fleeting satisfaction of a verbal conquest. Machiavelli, however, urges us to view the world as a chessboard, to think several moves ahead, and to choose our battles with the utmost care. For every argument won is a seed of resentment sown, every opponent vanquished, a potential ally alienated, and in the game of power as in life itself, it is often the accumulation of small, seemingly insignificant losses that ultimately leads to one's downfall. Section 2. Arguments as political missteps. Machiavelli, ever the student of power, recognized that arguments, while sometimes unavoidable, were often political missteps, cracks in the edifice of carefully constructed influence. He observed that those who sought to rule by force of argument alone often found themselves ruling over a kingdom of begrudging subjects, their authority brittle, their position precarious. In the courts of princes and the halls of power, he saw how those who engaged in endless disputation, however eloquent or well-reasoned, often alienated potential allies and fueled the fires of dissent. They mistook the ability to win an argument for the far more valuable skill of persuasion, the art of subtly guiding others to one's own way of thinking. For Machiavelli understood that true power lay not in forcing others to submit to one's will, but in subtly shaping their desires, in making them believe that your goals are their own. This requires a deft hand, a willingness to listen and to compromise, to cede the fleeting satisfaction of being right for the more enduring reward of achieving one's aims. To rule effectively, Machiavelli believed, one must master the art of the indirect approach. To achieve your goals, you must often allow others to believe they are acting of their own volition, their own best interests at heart. Arguments, with their inherent confrontational nature, their insistence on proving the other wrong, shatter this illusion of autonomy, breeding resentment and resistance where cooperation and support might have flourished. Machiavelli, a keen observer of human nature, understood the high cost of making enemies. He saw how even the most powerful individuals could be brought low by the accumulated weight of their enemies' resentment. He argued that it was far more prudent to cultivate alliances, to win over potential rivals through strategic generosity and well-placed favors. Every argument, however skillfully won, carries within it the seed of future conflict. The sting of defeat, the humiliation of being proven wrong, these are not emotions easily forgotten. They fester and grow, transforming into grudges that can poison relationships and undermine even the most carefully laid plans. A wise prince, Machiavelli argued, understands that the true measure of their power lies not in the number of their enemies vanquished, but in the strength and loyalty of their allies. To maintain this loyalty, a ruler must exercise restraint, choosing their battles carefully and avoiding unnecessary conflicts. For in the game of power, as in life, it is often those who are slow to anger, who forgive readily and hold no grudges, who ultimately prevail. They understand that the pursuit of vengeance is a fool's errand, a distraction from the more important task of securing one's position and achieving one's goals. Machiavelli, a master strategist, knew that reputation was a currency more valuable than gold. A ruler who was perceived as impulsive, quick to engage in petty squabbles, would soon find their authority undermined, their pronouncements disregarded. He advocated instead for the cultivation of a reputation for prudence, for careful deliberation and measured action. To be seen as a person of reason, slow to anger, and even slower to engage in needless disputation, was to command respect, to become a figure whose words carried weight, whose judgments were rarely questioned. This aura of wisdom and discernment, Machiavelli argued, was far more effective in influencing others than any amount of verbal sparring. For it is human nature to be drawn to those we perceive as being in control, those who seem to possess an inner compass guiding them through the storms of life. By refraining from engaging in every argument, by choosing our battles with care, we project an image of strength and self-assurance, qualities that inspire confidence and encourage others to follow our lead. This is not to say that one should remain silent in the face of injustice or allow oneself to be walked upon. Rather, it is a call for discernment, for choosing one's battles wisely and engaging in conflict only when absolutely necessary, when the potential rewards outweigh the inevitable costs. In the cacophony of the world where every voice clamors to be heard, Machiavelli saw a different kind of power, the power of strategic silence. He recognized that silence, when wielded skillfully, could be a weapon far more potent than the sharpest retort, the most eloquent argument. To remain silent in the face of provocation, to refuse to be drawn into the mire of petty squabbles, is to deny your opponent the satisfaction of a reaction. It is to maintain your composure, your dignity, and to project an aura of unshakable confidence. Silence in this context becomes a form of psychological warfare. It unsettles your opponent, forces them to confront the emptiness of their own pronouncements. It allows you to observe, to assess, and to formulate your own strategy while they exhaust themselves in their own verbal tempest. Moreover, silence can be a powerful tool for gathering information. When we refrain from speaking, we create a vacuum that others will rush to fill. People will often reveal their true motives, their hidden agendas, when they believe they are speaking to an audience that is receptive, non-judgmental. Machiavelli, a pragmatist to his core, understood that there are times when silence is not an option, when speaking up is necessary to defend one's interests or to advance one's agenda. However, he cautioned against engaging in discourse lightly, urging instead for a high degree of discernment in choosing when and how to engage. He argued that one should never enter into a debate without first carefully considering the potential costs and benefits. Is the issue at hand truly important enough to warrant the expenditure of time, energy, and social capital? Is the potential for victory worth the risk of alienating potential allies or strengthening the hand of one's enemies? Moreover, Machiavelli believed that even when one chooses to engage in discourse, it should be done with a clear objective in mind. Is the goal to win the argument outright, to prove the other party wrong? Or is it something more nuanced, such as subtly shifting the terms of the debate, planting seeds of doubt, or simply gaining a better understanding of the other party's position? By approaching discourse with this level of strategic forethought, we transform it from a haphazard exchange of words into a calculated maneuver in the game of power and influence. While Machiavelli recognized the importance of words, he ultimately believed that actions spoke louder. He argued that true power lay not in the ability to win an argument, but in the ability to shape events, to bend the world to one's will through decisive action. He observed that those who spent too much time arguing, too much energy justifying their every move, were often overtaken by events. While they were busy debating the finer points of strategy, their rivals were outmaneuvering them on the battlefield, forging alliances and consolidating power. Machiavelli's message is clear: the world rewards those who act, not those who talk. While discourse has its place, it should never be allowed to become a substitute for decisive action. A well-timed maneuver, a strategic alliance, a bold display of power. These are the tools that truly shape the course of history. Of course, this does not mean that one should act rashly or without forethought. On the contrary, Machiavelli stressed the importance of careful planning, of weighing the potential consequences of every action. In the Machiavellian worldview, life is not a series of isolated battles, but a protracted campaign for power and influence. To succeed in this game, one must be willing to play the long game, to forego the fleeting satisfaction of immediate gratification for the more enduring rewards of patience, strategy, and calculated restraint. This means being willing to choose your battles wisely, to let go of the need to be right in every instance, and to focus on the bigger picture. It means understanding that setbacks are inevitable, but that they do not have to be fatal. It means learning from your mistakes, adapting to changing circumstances, and never losing sight of your ultimate objectives. In the realm of human interaction, this translates to building relationships strategically, cultivating a network of allies, and understanding that influence is often best wielded subtly through suggestion and persuasion rather than brute force. It means being willing to compromise when necessary, to cede the small victories in order to secure the larger prize. By mastering the art of the long game, by cultivating patience, discipline, and a strategic mindset, we can navigate the complexities of the human landscape with greater skill and achieve our goals, not through brute force, but through the subtle and far more effective art of persuasion. While Machiavelli, the astute observer of power, saw arguments as strategic liabilities, the Stoics viewed them through a different lens, that of inner peace. For the Stoics, life was not a battlefield to be conquered, but a journey of self-mastery, a quest for tranquility amidst the storms of existence. They believed that true strength lay not in dominating others but in mastering oneself, in building an inner citadel impervious to the chaos and conflict of the external world. At the heart of Stoicism lies the understanding that we cannot control external events, the fickle whims of fortune, the actions of others, the inevitable setbacks and disappointments that life throws our way. What we can control, however, are our own thoughts, our emotions, our reactions to the world around us. It is in this inner realm, the Stoics believed, that true freedom and happiness reside. Arguments, with their inherent volatility, their power to stir up anger, frustration, and resentment, represented a direct assault on this inner citadel. To engage in them, the Stoics argued, was to surrender our most precious possession, our inner peace, to the whims of another. Instead of seeking to win arguments, the Stoics advocated for a radical shift in perspective. They urged us to view disagreements not as battles to be won or lost, but as opportunities for growth, for practicing virtue, for strengthening our inner resilience. Central to the Stoic worldview was the unwavering belief in the power of reason. The Stoics saw reason as the divine spark within each of us, the faculty that distinguished us from animals and allowed us to live in accordance with nature. They believed that by cultivating reason, by training ourselves to see the world clearly and objectively, we could free ourselves from the tyranny of our passions and achieve a state of lasting tranquility. Arguments, in the Stoic view, represented a failure of reason. They were seen as emotional outbursts fueled by ego, pride, and the need to be right. Instead of engaging in reasoned discourse, those caught in the throes of an argument often resorted to personal attacks, logical fallacies, and manipulative tactics, all in a desperate attempt to assert their intellectual dominance. The Stoics offered a different path, one guided by reason and virtue. They believed that disagreements, when approached with the right mindset, could be transformed into opportunities for learning and growth. Instead of seeking to impose our views on others, we should strive to understand their perspectives, to challenge our own assumptions, and to engage in a shared pursuit of truth. This approach, however, requires a high degree of self-awareness and emotional regulation. We must be willing to examine our own biases, to acknowledge our own limitations, and to let go of the need to be right. By approaching disagreements with humility, curiosity, and a genuine desire to understand, we can transform them from sources of conflict into opportunities for connection and growth. The Stoics understood that true happiness, what they called, stemmed not from external circumstances but from inner peace, a state of tranquility, undisturbed by the inevitable ups and downs of life. They believed that this state of inner peace was our natural inheritance, our birthright as rational beings. However, they also recognized that it was a fragile state, easily shattered by the turbulence of our own thoughts and emotions. Arguments, with their power to trigger our fight-or-flight response, represented a potent threat to our inner peace. When we engage in an argument, our bodies are flooded with stress hormones, our heart rate and blood pressure increase, and our minds become consumed by thoughts of attack and defense. This physiological and psychological arousal, while sometimes necessary in situations of immediate danger, is utterly counterproductive when it comes to resolving disagreements or fostering understanding. The Stoics recognize that every argument, regardless of whether we win or lose, exacts a toll on our inner peace. The more we engage in arguments, the more we reinforce the neural pathways associated with stress, anger, and frustration. Over time, this can lead to a state of chronic stress and anxiety, making it increasingly difficult to find peace and contentment in our daily lives. By choosing to disengage from arguments, by refusing to let ourselves be drawn into these energy-draining battles of ego, we reclaim our power, preserve our inner peace, and create space for more positive and productive interactions. Section 4. Mastering the Self, the Stoic Art of Non-Reactivity. At the heart of Stoic practice lies the concept of, often mistranslated as apathy but more accurately understood as freedom from passion. The Stoics did not advocate for the suppression of emotions but rather for the cultivation of a state of inner stillness, a non-reactive awareness that allowed us to experience emotions without being ruled by them. Arguments, by their very nature, are highly emotionally charged. They trigger our deepest insecurities, our need to be right, our fear of being wrong. When we react to these triggers with anger, defensiveness, or aggression, we relinquish control of our emotions and allow ourselves to be swept away by the current of the interaction. The Stoics offered a different approach, one rooted in self-awareness and emotional regulation. They taught that by cultivating our capacity for non-reactivity, by training ourselves to observe our emotions without judgment or attachment, we could break free from the cycle of reactivity that fuels so much conflict. This doesn't mean that we should become emotionless robots. The Stoics recognize that emotions are a natural part of the human experience. However, they believe that by learning to observe our emotions with detachment, by recognizing that our thoughts and feelings are not always an accurate reflection of reality, we could choose how to respond to challenging situations rather than reacting automatically. Section 5. The Gift of Perspective, Reframing Our View of Arguments. The Stoics believed that our perception shapes our reality. What we choose to focus on, the meaning we ascribe to events, determines our experience of the world. They taught that by shifting our perspective, by reframing our view of challenging situations, we could transform our experience from one of suffering to one of growth and opportunity. Arguments, often viewed as obstacles or threats, could be seen through a different lens, as opportunities for practicing virtue. Instead of seeing the other person as an adversary to be vanquished, we could view them as a fellow traveler on the path of life, someone who, like us, is doing the best they can with the knowledge and experience they possess. This shift in perspective requires a conscious effort, a willingness to question our assumptions, and to open ourselves to the possibility that we might not have all the answers. It also requires a healthy dose of humility, a recognition that we, like everyone else, are flawed and imperfect beings, prone to errors in judgment and lapses in reason. By reframing our view of arguments, by choosing to see them as opportunities for growth rather than threats to our ego, we transform them from sources of stress and conflict into valuable lessons in patience, compassion, and understanding. Section 6. From Conflict to Collaboration, Seeking Common Ground. While the Stoics placed great emphasis on inner peace and self-mastery, they were not proponents of isolation or withdrawal from the world. They recognized that we are social creatures, hardwired for connection and belonging. They believed that true fulfillment comes not from solitary contemplation, but from living in harmony with others, contributing to the common good, and striving to make the world a better place. Arguments, with their inherent adversarial dynamic, often drive a wedge between people, creating division and discord where there could be unity and understanding. The Stoics offered a different approach, one rooted in empathy, compassion, and a genuine desire to find common ground. They taught that even in the midst of disagreement there is always common ground to be found. Beneath the surface of differing opinions and perspectives lies a shared humanity, a common set of needs, desires, and aspirations. By focusing on these shared values, by striving to understand the other person's perspective, we can bridge the gap between us and them, and create space for dialogue, collaboration, and mutual understanding. This approach requires a willingness to listen deeply, to suspend judgment, and to approach the conversation with an open mind and an open heart. It also requires a healthy dose of humility, a recognition that we might not have all the answers, that our perspective is just one among many. Section 7. Living in accordance with nature. Accepting what we can control. At the core of Stoic philosophy lies the concept of living in accordance with nature. For the Stoics, this meant recognizing the natural order of things, accepting what we can control and what we cannot, and focusing our energy on what is within our sphere of influence. Arguments, often arising from our attempts to control things outside our control, the opinions of others, the outcome of events, the unpredictable nature of life itself, represent a violation of this fundamental Stoic principle. When we engage in arguments, we are essentially trying to impose our will on the world, to bend reality to fit our desires. The Stoics taught that true peace of mind comes from surrendering to what is, from accepting the things we cannot change, and focusing our energy on what we can. When it comes to arguments, this means recognizing that we cannot control what other people think, say, or do. We can, however, control our own thoughts, our own words, and our own actions. By accepting what we cannot control and focusing on what we can, we free ourselves from the tyranny of trying to change the unchangeable. We also create space for more productive and fulfilling interactions, ones based on acceptance, understanding, and mutual respect. Section 8. The path to virtue, choosing wisdom over the need to be right. The Stoics believed that the ultimate goal of life was to live virtuously, to cultivate wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance in all that we do. They saw virtue as the highest good, the source of true happiness and fulfillment. Everything else, wealth, fame, power, was considered indifferent, neither good nor bad in itself, but only in how it was used. Arguments, often fueled by ego, pride, and the need to be right, represent a departure from this virtuous path. When we engage in arguments, we prioritize our own need for validation over the pursuit of truth, understanding, and wisdom. We allow our egos to drive a wedge between ourselves and others, creating division and discord where there could be connection and collaboration. The Stoics offered a different path, one marked by humility, self-awareness, and a willingness to learn and grow. They taught that true wisdom lies not in always being right, but in being open to the possibility that we might be wrong, in being willing to change our minds when presented with new information, and in valuing the pursuit of truth over the need to be right. By choosing wisdom over the need to be right, we embark on a path of continuous learning and growth. We also create the conditions for more harmonious and fulfilling relationships, ones based on mutual respect, understanding, and a shared commitment to living a virtuous life. Section 1. The art of strategic disengagement. In the heat of the moment, when emotions run high and the urge to prove ourselves right consumes us, disengaging from an argument can feel like an act of surrender. Our egos, wired for self-preservation, scream at us to stand our ground, to defend our positions, to emerge victorious from the verbal fray. However, as both Machiavelli and the Stoics understood, true strength lies not in winning every battle, but in choosing our battles wisely and knowing when to walk away. Strategic disengagement is not about suppressing our voices or abandoning our principles. It is about recognizing that not every argument is worth having, that some battles are best fought on different terrain, and that sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. When we disengage from an argument, we deny our opponent the satisfaction of seeing us riled up. We create space for cooler heads to prevail, for reason to reassert itself, and for the possibility of a more constructive dialogue to emerge. This requires a high degree of self-awareness, emotional regulation, and a willingness to prioritize long-term goals over short-term gratification. Here are a few signs that it might be time to disengage from an argument. The conversation has become overly emotional. When logic and reason give way to personal attacks, insults, and raised voices, it is a clear indication that the conversation has veered off course. You find yourself repeating the same points. If you find yourself going around in circles, reiterating the same arguments without making any headway, it might be time to table the discussion and revisit it at a later time when emotions have cooled down. the other person is not open to listening, if the other person is not genuinely interested in understanding your perspective or engaging in a respectful exchange of ideas, continuing the argument will likely be an exercise in futility. Section 2. Transforming arguments into dialogues. Arguments, by their very nature, are adversarial. They pit one person against another, creating a dynamic of winners and losers. Dialogues, on the other hand, are collaborative. They seek to bridge differences, foster understanding, and arrive at a shared truth. While arguments often escalate into conflict, dialogues have the potential to build bridges and strengthen relationships. Transforming an argument into a dialogue requires a conscious shift in mindset and a willingness to engage in active listening. Instead of approaching the conversation with the goal of proving ourselves right, we must enter with a genuine desire to understand the other person's perspective, to find common ground, and to explore alternative viewpoints. Here are a few strategies for transforming arguments into dialogues. Asterisk. Ask clarifying questions. Instead of making assumptions about the other person's position, ask open-ended questions to gain a deeper understanding of their perspective. For example, instead of saying, "You're wrong," you could ask, "Can you help me understand why you see it that way?" Listen actively and reflectively. Pay attention not only to the words being spoken, but also to the underlying emotions and unspoken messages. Reflect back what you hear to ensure that you are accurately understanding the other person's perspective. Find points of agreement. Even in the midst of disagreement, there are often areas of overlap or shared values. Identify these points of agreement and use them as a foundation for building a more constructive conversation. Asterisk. Use one statements. Instead of making accusatory statements, which can put the other person on the defensive, use I statements to express your own thoughts, feelings, and experiences. For example, instead of saying, "You're not listening to me," you could say, "I'm feeling unheard right now." Section 3. The power of inquiry, asking instead of attacking. Section 4. Building bridges, acknowledging perspectives. Section 5. The long game, choosing your battles wisely. Not every disagreement is worth our time, energy, and emotional investment. Section 6. Leading by influence, the power of example. True leadership is about inspiring others to follow by setting an example of virtue, wisdom, and integrity. Section 7. Navigating disagreements in the workplace. Applying the principles of Machiavelli and the Stoics can help us navigate workplace disagreements with greater skill and grace. Relationships, whether personal or professional, are built on trust, respect, and understanding. The wisdom of Machiavelli and the Stoics can guide us in fostering harmony in our relationships. The principles espoused by Machiavelli and the Stoics offer more than just strategies for winning arguments or avoiding conflict. They provide a framework for living a more purposeful and fulfilling life. In the heat of a disagreement, our instinct is often to speak our minds, to defend our positions, and to ensure our voices are heard. However, as we've learned from both Machiavelli and the Stoics, there is a hidden power in restraint, in choosing our words carefully, and sometimes in choosing silence altogether. Strategic silence is not about suppressing our thoughts or conceding defeat. It's about creating space for reflection, for observation, and for choosing our responses with intention. It's about recognizing that sometimes the most powerful statements are made in the absence of words. Embrace the power of the pause. Before responding in a heated moment, take a deep breath, count to 10, or excuse yourself from the conversation momentarily. This pause allows you to gather your thoughts, regulate your emotions, and choose a response that aligns with your goals and values. Section 2. Shift from statements to questions, cultivating curiosity. Arguments often arise from a place of certainty, a belief that our perspective is the correct one, and a desire to convince the other person of our rightness. However, this approach often backfires, triggering defensiveness and escalating the conflict. Shifting from statements to questions can transform the entire dynamic of a disagreement. When we ask questions, we communicate a willingness to listen, to learn, and to see the world through the other person's eyes. We invite dialogue, foster connection, and create space for a more collaborative search for understanding. Instead of stating your opinion as fact, rephrase it as a question. For example, instead of saying, "This is the best way to do it," ask, "What do you think about this approach?" This subtle shift opens the door for a more collaborative and respectful conversation. Section 3. Acknowledge and validate, fostering understanding and respect. One of the most powerful ways to de-escalate a conflict and foster connection is to acknowledge and validate the other person's perspective, even if we don't agree with it. This doesn't mean that we have to concede our own viewpoints. It simply means that we are willing to see the world through their eyes, to understand how they arrived at their conclusions, and to respect their experience. When we feel heard and understood, our defenses naturally lower, and we are more open to listening to alternative viewpoints. Validation is a powerful tool for building bridges and creating a more harmonious and productive dialogue. Start by actively listening to the other person's perspective, paying attention not only to their words but also to their tone of voice and body language. Then reflect back what you've heard, using phrases like, "What I hear you saying is," or "It sounds like you're feeling." This simple act of reflection can go a long way in building rapport and fostering understanding. Section 4. Choose your battles wisely, conserving energy for what matters. Not every disagreement is a battle worth fighting. In fact, some of the most important victories come from knowing when to disengage, when to let go, and when to conserve our energy for the things that truly matter. Discernment is key. Before engaging in any conflict, ask yourself, is this issue truly important to me? What are the potential costs and benefits of engaging in this argument? Am I in the right frame of mind to have a productive conversation? Is there a more effective way to address this issue? By choosing our battles wisely, we free ourselves from the burden of unnecessary conflict, conserve our energy for the things that truly matter, our relationships, our work, our personal growth, and create a more peaceful and fulfilling life. Section 1. The power of transcending arguments. We've explored the battlefields of ego, where words are weapons and silence is often mistaken for defeat. We've delved into the strategic insights of Machiavelli, who saw arguments as potential pitfalls on the path to power, and the Stoic wisdom of seeking inner peace over verbal victory. But the true power lies not in mastering the art of argument, but in transcending it altogether. Imagine a world where disagreements, instead of igniting conflict, become catalysts for growth and understanding. Imagine relationships strengthened, not strained, by the ability to navigate differences with grace and respect. This is the promise of embracing the principles we've explored, the power of choosing influence over dominance, understanding over victory. It's a shift in perspective, a conscious choice to see beyond the allure of being right, to recognize the inherent value in every perspective and to approach disagreements as opportunities for connection, not conquest. Section 2. Embrace the path of influence and inner peace. This is not a path for the faint of heart. It requires courage to choose silence when our egos are clamoring for validation. It demands humility to acknowledge the limitations of our own perspectives. And it necessitates a deep commitment to cultivating inner peace, to refusing to let the actions of others dictate our emotional states. But the rewards are immeasurable. By embracing the principles of strategic silence, thoughtful inquiry, and compassionate understanding, we unlock a realm of influence far more enduring than any fleeting victory in an argument. We build stronger relationships, cultivate greater self-awareness, and create a ripple effect of harmony that extends far beyond ourselves. As we navigate the complexities of human interaction, let us remember the words of Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, who wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." Let our revenge against the tyranny of argumentative culture be a commitment to building a world where understanding reigns, where differences are valued, and where true influence flows not from the force of our words but from the strength of our character. The path is clear, the choice is ours. Let us choose wisely.